DK Metcalf from the Seattle Seahawks, and you're watching NorbCam.
What's up, everybody? This is NorbCam coming at you. Happy Blue Friday to everybody. I'm excited. I'm excited because for only the third time I think this year we have sort of a mini roundtable. It's not the full roundtable, but I'll take a mini any day of the week. And so we have a lot to talk about. Breaking news today with the moving of the game from Sunday to Tuesday. COVID all over the place. And then there's the game itself. We're not even talking about the game because we're talking about everything but the game. So anyway, we're going to get into it. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Real quick before we launch the show, I just want to say a quick shout out to Daniel Dovinh of Dovinh Group at Marketplace Sotheby's, who's been kind enough to sponsor my show for this season. So I greatly appreciate his help. So without further ado, let's get to the show and bring the roundtable here. Let's get them on here. Where are they? There they are. All right, we have got, let me just go clockwise, I suppose. We'll start to my left, your right. Squabo says, what's up, Squabo?
Hey, Norb, pleasure to be here and connect with everyone. I missed this.
I missed this too. Let's go down to the bottom right corner. We've got Seahawks Martin. Martin, welcome back. Good to see you, buddy.
What's up, everyone? How's everyone doing? Yeah, it's been some interesting news lately.
It has been. I can't wait to dive into it. And of course, just below me here in the bottom left, we've got Steezy A. Smith. Steezy, what's happening, man?
Man, as always, it's a pleasure to be here. You know, I love doing this with you guys. And like Squabo said, it's been a while. So, I miss doing this. And, I can't wait to dive in.
Yeah, well, let's dive into it. Let's cut to the chase, to the thing that everybody's talking about today. The COVID situation with so many players, particularly on the Rams. I think they were up to 25 or 26 players on the COVID list. And wow. The NFL decided, not just with our game, but a couple of the other games, the Raiders-Browns game and the Eagles-Washington game have been moved into next week. And our game in particular moved to 4 o'clock Pacific time, 7 o'clock Eastern time on Tuesday. Tuesday night football to play the Rams, mostly to give the Rams a chance to get more of their team back together again, which I think is bull. But I want to get your guys' opinions on this. Let's start with, Squab, let's start with you, man. What's your thoughts on just this change of schedule, the change of timing to Tuesday?
Norb, I watched your stream earlier, and when you talked about a little bit about your opinion about the whole thing, and I agree with you. And it is time for us, along with all the players on Twitter right now, to call out the NFL because they are going back on their word, not only speaking out of both sides of their mouth from earlier in the summer when they put out the memo talking about COVID protocols and what was going to happen when teams don't have enough players. They were saying teams are going to forfeit. Obviously now with the new variants, the Omicron and the Delta variant that are now prevalent and at risk for all of the NFL and all of the community on the planet in general, yes, the situation has changed, but even in the memo that they dropped as of today, they're speaking out of both sides of their mouth, and it is ridiculous. I have an excerpt. I have a quote from, and it was from Roger Goodell. It was to chief executives. It was to club presidents. It was to general managers, and it was to head coaches. And the quote that I have says, each club is obligated to have its team ready to play at the scheduled time and place. There is no right to postpone a game, and games will not be postponed or rescheduled because of roster issues affecting a particular position group or particular number of players. If games are postponed, we will make every effort to minimize the competitive and economic burden on the participating teams as well as our fans and business partners. What does that mean? What are they talking about? Well, first of all, what they're contradicting themselves there, and they're kind of alluding to why. This is a message not just to the organizations, but it's a money move. Norb, exactly what you were talking about. I could not agree more. This is a message to sponsors. This is a message to the fantasy football community because playoffs have officially started. This is a message to owners. There are a lot of teams that are extremely impacted by this decision, and it cannot be weighed lightly. Las Vegas at Cleveland, originally on Saturday. Now it's going to be on Monday. That makes a short week for Cleveland. On next Saturday, they're scheduled to be at Green Bay. So they're at home versus Vegas, then they're at Green Bay. That's a very fast turnaround. Normally for Thursday night football, there are 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, that a team has to prepare between game days of Sunday and Thursday, right? Well, with this new arrangement, 4 different teams only have 4 days between games. So it's one more than Thursday night football, but Thursday night football has been a very controversial thing for a very long time, as you alluded to earlier with the Richard Sherman take. So it's ridiculous how it's cutting into play, the play. It sucks for fantasy football, but the NFL is contradicting themselves here. They're going against what they say, and it's for the purposes of money. It's not for the interest of health, because if it was about health, they just give players the week off to recover and to get well for the next game. Norb, I agree with you.
Well, I appreciate you responding to my take, and I'm glad you see things the same way that I do. You did much more research. I didn't even know about that quote from the actual policy there. There's clearly is a contradiction there. Steezy, what about you, man? What was your reaction to this rescheduling of this game?
You know, I don't have too much more to add just because I agree with the both of you guys. I mean, we've seen players on Twitter, you know, Darius Slay was talking about, I thought our games were going to get, you know, forfeited or instead of being postponed. But you wonder why people don't like Roger Goodell, right? And this is just the latest example of why people don't like Roger Goodell. I mean, his resume isn't flawless. It's full of flaws. And I mean, this is just, I guess, the latest in a long line of things that he's done or failed to do, really. Baker Mayfield was talking about player safety. Well, I mean, how does this embody player safety, postponing games and contradicting and going back on your word? All the NFL really cares about is money, and it's been that way forever. This just further proves that. And honestly, I don't think it's fair, but it doesn't really matter what we think. The NFL is going to do what they feel like is best, and that's to make money. So that's really all I have to add. I'm shocked. I'm not with it. I don't agree with it. But you know, Roger Goodell he follows the money. So that's really all I got to say.
That's why I think whenever they do talk about player safety, it is such a contradiction. Because, you know, pushing for that 17, going from 16 to 17 game schedule, there's nothing about safety in that move. That's all about making more money, more games, more revenue, more money. And of course, the players, you know, it's easy for us to go, yeah, more football. I love that aspect of it. But I'm thinking, man, because you see these guys, you see those injury reports every week, right? These guys are, every week somebody's banged up going through this, and this guy's got this injury, and you know, it's getting worse and worse, it seems like. Maybe just because of the fact that we have more and more bigger, faster, stronger players, it's just harder and harder out there to stay healthy. And so you add more games, you lessen the time between games, like this is going to cause. That's just a recipe for more injuries. And again, that's what really gets me irked about this whole move. How about you, Seahawks Martin? What's your take on it?
I mean, it's just like you guys said, NFL, they care a lot about money. I mean, almost, it feels like all the big corporations, that's what they care about, because obviously more games, more TV time, bigger ratings, more money. That's just kind of how it goes. I mean, it's a little unfortunate that, you know, we get kicked out of Sunday, but I mean, I guess we might get Tyler Lockett back after this. You never know, but it's just a little disappointing to see us, you know, get kicked off. It's a little disappointing to see how the NFL handles all this stuff, but I mean, we're just down here looking up at them, seeing what they do, and I mean, unless there's a lot of change, I mean, we can't fix everything here, so it's just a little disappointing to see that.
Yeah, and you know, again, it's that ratio of 26 players on the Rams, and I brought up in my rant earlier, I said, what if 26 guys who all had wasn't COVID. Just a fluke series of injuries, and then the same players all got the same injuries. Would they postpone the game? Would they do the same move if it was just normal injuries? You know, I don't think so. But it's, you know, they had that ability to change this because they put it in the old COVID category. So, you know, there's a lot of very frustrating manipulation going on here. I was just looking forward to them playing the game. And I was thinking for us, it would be, well, Seattle's going to be without Tyler Lockett probably and Alex Collins. You know, but those guys will be out there, guys. But they have plenty of players who are still good. But that was before the list went from, I think at that time they had maybe 15 or something. Then it went up to 26. So clearly they've got an issue going on there. And then we don't even know if they're going to be all available on Tuesday. You know, just because they've pushed it back 3 days doesn't mean they're all going to be clear. So it's yet to be seen how this is all going to play out. And then what? They're going to have, you know, then I assume they would forfeit. But I don't really know the letter of the law because there's no more time to push that back anymore. So it'll be interesting to watch. But yeah, it is definitely frustrating. You guys can comment in on the chat, you know, your thoughts as well. Was that, Squabs?
Sorry to interrupt, Norb. We thought that we knew the letter of the law. And I agree with you. That's what the frustration is. And that's why Steezy's alluding to people being frustrated with Goodell is that what he said today is the same thing that he said over the summer. But the difference is that they're not acting in accordance with what they're saying. They're not forfeiting games when the pressure is, or the iron is to the metal. You know what I'm saying? Like it's time to go. They're being tested and they're going away from it. Norb, you brought up some great points. You're talking about, you know, we don't know if they're going to be available to play Tuesday. We don't know if everyone's going to get off the protocol. We also don't know, and this is the more concerning part, and this is the big picture part that I've heard a lot of people talking about, and a lot of the organizations that are involved are very frustrated because what if on Monday, Russell Wilson, Derek Carr, Jalen Hurts, Gardner Minshew, my guy from Wazoo, goes on protocol and are ineligible for their games that they would have been able to play on Sunday, and it wasn't their fault that they were postponed. So if they would have been able to play Sunday, and now on Monday, Russell Wilson goes into COVID protocol, we don't have him on Tuesday, our season is over, just like that. It's ridiculous how it impacts the teams without taking into account, and Norb, this was one of your biggest points earlier, not taking into account what each team needs. Every game is a must-win for Seattle right now. All of the teams that got moved are in contention for the playoffs as of right now. So it's a bit the Raiders, every single team, Washington, the Eagles, us, the Rams, everyone's fighting for the playoffs. So it's unfair to us as all of our organizations to put that added level of pressure and take away the days that we have off. Additionally, Washington football, to prove that this is about money, the Washington football team and Cleveland were both down to their third string quarterbacks for this game via the protocols as they stood. And LA's biggest football market, the Los Angeles Rams, would have had to forfeit a home game. They just spent $5 billion building SoFi Stadium. So why would they forfeit this game? That's why we can tell it's about the money. It's not about the health. Nothing that they have said has aligned with that. If it was about the health, forfeit the game. It's about the money.
You know, Nick H in the super chat brings up a good question. Would the NFL have moved it if it was Seahawks with 26 players? Well, we won't know because
I think if it was in Seattle,
in Seattle, right? Because we already got flexed out. We already know how the NFL thinks of Seattle right now. They flexed stuff out of prime time, which was a big mistake, by the way, because they missed out on a really good game between the Seahawks and the 49ers.
It's funny because people talk about like an East Coast bias, and I heard earlier on 710 that apparently even though the Seahawks-Rams game and the Washington Eagles game is going on at the same time, most of the U.S. is going to get the Washington Eagles game, which for some reason is weird considering – you know, the Seahawks chances. I mean, I get that Washington and Eagles are both vying for a playoff spot, but like you've got the Rams here looking to take over the NFC West. You got the Seahawks trying to stay alive in a playoff spot, and those two always somehow end up with a good game most of the time. So I don't really know why they take out. It's like a 70 to 30% type of ratio. So that's a little disappointing. I guess it's an East Coast bias all the time, or if just the bigger team that gets more revenue.
Yeah, maybe if Seattle was, 9-3 and the Rams were 8-4 or some kind of situation like that, maybe that would have been, looked at differently. But, right now, Seattle's stock value in the scope of things is not high, right? I mean, we got flexed out because we have had a bad season. As far as the rest of the analysts are concerned, Seattle's done, right? I mean, I don't think anybody gives us a chance of making it back. I mean, only ones thinking we have a shot is us. We're the ones who are hanging on that one little 2% or whatever, 3%, 4% chance that we can get back in. But, as far as the rest of the world, the rest of the country is concerned, Seattle's just not, until we can prove that we're back in it, we're kind of the doorstep right now as far as the NFC West when we were in last place, So until that changes, they're going to look at us that way. So I do want to spend some time talking about the game itself because right now everybody's talking so much about policy and COVID and rescheduling and all that. We still got a game to play. At some point, we're going to play this game, and it looks like obviously we're stuck with playing it on Tuesday unless the Rams can't field a team then, and then we would win by forfeit, I would think. But let's assume that they play, and I'm going to assume that they'll get a good chunk, maybe not all of them, but they'll probably get a good chunk of their players back. I would like to think that probably they'll get Lockett. We've only got 2 guys to worry about, and they'll probably come back. So let's talk a little bit about the game itself, shall we? I want to get your guys' take on just, before all this happened, we were at this point talking about this is the game of the year. They have to win this. This is must win. If we don't win this game, pretty much our playoff hopes are, maybe not mathematically, but for all intents and purposes, done. Let's talk about your guys' take on what you think will happen in this game. Steezy, let's go to you first. What do you think? What's your take on, I guess we got to put it in the context of what it will look like on Tuesday with the players we think will be playing. But what's your take on, Seattle versus the Rams? Is our season going to come to an end on Tuesday, or have we still got a chance? What do you think?
It's definitely a little harder to predict, just because of the situation that we're in, the circumstances that we're dealing with. I was kind of hoping that we would get to play the Rams without some of their best players. But now it looks like, Jalen Ramsey's going to be back. Odell tested negative earlier today, and so presumably he's going to be back. Darrell Henderson could potentially be back. But, I guess it's a good thing, that we get to play them at full strength, just because if we're going to pass this test, I'd rather we pass it with them being fully healthy and whatnot. I don't know. I feel like I'm just going to go into my keys for the game. Squabo and I talked about it on the Bolt the other day, but I feel like if we're going to have any shot at winning this game, these 3 things, or at least 2 of these 3 things have to happen. Number 1, we have to slow down their play action game. We have to stay disciplined. We can't bite too hard just because the Rams, obviously a lot of their offense, has a whole bunch of motion, has a lot of play action. They take a lot of deep shots. They rely on the ground game. But lately, Matthew Stafford and the Rams, they've been tearing it up via play action. We saw against the Cardinals, that deep shot to Van Jefferson. Odell Beckham has 3 touchdowns in 3 games. When they get that play action game going, when their running game is going, their offense is nearly unstoppable. And so if we can't even stop their play action game, if we can't stay disciplined in that aspect or in that regard, I don't think we have a shot at winning this football game. And some of the knocks on Matthew Stafford in that offense this year have been the lack of play action passing attempts, just because even with Jared Goff in the fold, they were always in the top 2, top 3, top 4, top 5 in terms of play action attempts per game. And most of the time, their offense was successful. Their offense was lethal, even with the Jared Goff under center, just because of how effective their ground game was, of how effective play action was. And this year, it's shown to be even more lethal. The only thing is they haven't been going to it as often because Matthew Stafford, during his time in Detroit, he wasn't accustomed to, relying on the play action game because they never really had a ground game. And so it was just really him slinging the ball all over the field, not having to rely on play action. That just wasn't really a part of his arsenal. But what I've really noticed with their offense is they've really been starting to incorporate that more and more as the season progresses. And they're probably the best team of football. And I think Matthew Stafford statistically has been the best quarterback in the NFL on play action. And Russell Wilson is also up there. But obviously we haven't been able to go to that as much because our ground game has been neutralized for most of the year. But if we can't do that, and starting with that, we have no shot at winning this game. Number 2, they play pretty, not gritty. We've seen some of their losses. They had that 3-game losing streak, right, to the Titans, to the Niners, and then to the Packers. What do all those teams have in common? They all have very strong ground attacks. They all have great play in the trenches, both on the offensive lines and the defensive lines. And so although the Rams have all this, skill position talent, they have a whole bunch of superstars on both sides of the football. When it comes down to play in the trenches, they can there can be cracks, you know, in the armor, at least in that regard. And so I know we're not the most physical team. I know we're not the best, you know, ground and pound team, at least anymore. But if we could, you know, run the ball with authority, if we can establish the run, if we could get Rashad Penny going, if we could, you know, bring back what we did in that game against the Houston Texans, then we could possibly slow this team down. Obviously, that's going to help us in the time of possession battle. But if we don't run the football, if we're still one-dimensional, if we're unable to unlock the play action aspect of our offense, again, we have no shot at winning this football game. Key number 3, we got to utilize and emphasize quick tempo, just because all year long, and even in the last couple of years, we've seen when Russell Wilson is running that 2-minute offense, that 2-minute drill, when we're running more up tempo, when, you know, the tempos has increased, Russell Wilson is slinging the ball all over the field. We're scoring touchdowns. We're converting first downs. We're moving the ball down the field and swiftly, I might add. And so I looked at his stat, and I don't remember their record exactly, but I know the Rams, they're a lot better when they're playing with the lead as opposed to playing from behind. They're not really a team that plays all that well. They're not really getting dubs when they're playing from behind. And so if we're able to establish and build an early lead to start off the game, then, you know, maybe the Rams have a hard time getting back. I don't know. But if we can't capitalize on at least 2 of the 3 of these keys that I just mentioned, I wouldn't even give us a shot to win this game. It'll be close nevertheless, but the Rams, they look like they're starting to turn it up. They look like they're getting hot. And as we all know, Sean McVay does have Pete Carroll's number. And so, and what could be the game of the year, it all boils down to this. And I just hope that, you know, Pete Carroll comes ready to go. I'd hate for us to lose to the Rams. I know the game is in LA, so that definitely doesn't help. But look, if we can't convert on any of these or capitalize on these, we don't even have a shot.
All right, so recap them one-liner style. What are your 3 keys again?
Key number 1, don't bite too hard on the play action game. We have to stay disciplined. Number 2, they play pretty, not gritty. So we got to get physical. We got to, you know, show them what's up in the trenches. Number 3, utilize and emphasize quick tempo, build an early lead, because the Rams, they don't play their best when they're playing from behind.
All right. Let's go to you, Martin. What's it going to take for Seattle to beat the Rams and not get swept? This would be 3 in a row, by the way. If we lose this game, it would be 3 consecutive losses if you include the wild card game from last year at home. How do we stop this, Martin?
As the 12 knows, you never go into a Rams game feeling optimistic. Never, because the Rams seem to always have our number anytime we play them. Even if we're good, you've seen all the years ever since 2013. We've been hot, but somehow we still lose to them, or at least make the game close somehow. The Rams, you know, of course, they had that rough 3-game losing streak, but they seem like they're getting back on pace. You saw that they just beat the Cardinals. And although they have so many COVID cases, they might come back. A lot of their guys might come back. Odell Beckham Jr. is most likely going to come back. Heck, maybe even Jalen Ramsey's going to come back. And that's not good, because we kind of have to start feeding the ball to DK more. But if Jalen Ramsey goes up on DK, it's going to be really hard, especially since their defense is a really strong defense. Our O-line, I'm not exactly feeling confident. You know, you've seen that Rams O-line. You have Aaron Donald, arguably one of the greatest defensive linemen of this decade. Of this decade. Leonard Floyd is also really good, and I think he's going to line up against our backup, Jake Curhan, which is going to be a pain because look, Curhan did pretty good last week, but it was the Texans. Come on, the Texans have a pretty bad defense. So, I mean, if Russell gets sacked like less than 3 times, that's a win for me, honestly, at this point. But I don't feel very confident going into this game, especially since it's in LA, since the Rams always have our number. And, I mean, if we lose, our season's over. A losing record basically says losing season, we're done, we're screwed. We'll see what happens, but coming into this game, not exactly confident, but we'll see what happens.
All right. Squabo, how about you? What's it going to take for Seattle to get this win?
Well, so the Hawks lead the all-time series 25-23-0. But this goes all the way back to the first year the Seahawks came to be in 1976, but the Rams won in blowout fashion 45-6. And the Hawks, Martin, to counter your point a little bit, there was a time in which Seahawks fans could look forward to playing the Rams without fears, and that's when we won 10 straight from 05 to 09. But recently, that has not been the case. Since the Rams moved back to LA, they are 8-4 against Seattle. Since McVay got there, they are 6-3 against Seattle. They're winners of the last two, including that game that you mentioned, Norb, in Seattle in the playoffs last year. Seattle's only scored 30 points 4 times this year, and I think we're going to need to do it if we're going to win this game. Like I said, the Rams won the last two. We need to turn this around. We talked about the impact of the game being moved to Tuesday and how with the COVID list, 8 players for the Rams could potentially come back that would not have been eligible. Would have been eligible. Excuse me, not 8 players, 8 starters. 29 players, 8 starters versus 2 players and 1 starter for the Seattle Seahawks. That's the negative side of it from a Seahawks perspective. But the positive side, if we look at the injury report from this week, all of the players I'm about to list missed at least 2 days of practice. And that's Gabe Jackson, DK, Brandon Shell, D. Eskridge, Quandre Diggs, Freddie Swain, Al Woods, Carlos Dunlap, and Dwayne Brown. They didn't list if he practiced on Thursday. I wasn't at practice, so I can't tell. But on Wednesday, he missed practice. So there's a lot of concern there with some of our injuries later on in the season, a lot of veteran players getting time off. So the fact that it gets pushed back when this is, I'm just giving you guys the bright side here. I want to play them at their best regardless. So I don't care if, we're not getting to play an injured team. I'd rather have them forfeit than play an injured team that's not at their full strength. At the same time, we have an opportunity to rest up some more guys for easily the most important game of our season. What is it going to take for us to win? Well, we got to double Cooper Kupp, and that's first and foremost. Last game against us, he had 7 receptions for 92 yards and 0 touchdowns, and we actually had a chance to win, and that's even with Russell Wilson getting injured. So that's definitely going to be a huge key, especially considering that Robert Woods went off and he's unavailable for this game, out for the year. He had 12 receptions and 150 yards for 0 touchdowns in the last game versus Seattle. Cooper Kupp is on a historic pace. Now he's already has 113 receptions, 1,489 yards, and 12 touchdowns, accounting for 222.4 fantasy points. He's already 55th most reception yards in a single season all time, and that's with 4 games remaining. He's only 475 yards away from Calvin Johnson's 2012 record, and Coop has 1 extra game to do it. With 4 games left, he needs 119 yards per game. He's been averaging 114.5. So I think we need to keep him underneath that threshold, keep him underneath 100 yards, limit him to 1 touchdown at most. And I have him in a team that's in fantasy playoffs. I still want to see him do nothing. Limit Cooper Kupp. That's key number 1. Key number 2, win the turnover battle. We lost it 2-0 last time. Wilson had a pick and Geno had the game-losing interception. It's time to strike back in their house. Quandre Diggs already has a pick 6 in LA. Let's do it one more time. And key number 3, we need to dominate third down. We had a chance to win the last game, and it was because we held them to 2 for 10 on third down. I'm talking about our last matchup with the Los Angeles Rams. At Arizona, the Los Angeles Rams were 6 for 12, and versus Jacksonville, they were 5 for 12 on third down. We need to keep them equal or less than 30%. And that means finding Lockett on third down for us and finding Cooper Kupp on third down for them.
Nice breakdown there, Squabs. Going back in the history books and everything. Well played. I gotta mention here. I brought this up a little bit a second ago, but Vegas Eats Speaks, who's very active on my channel. Here's the collateral damage to when you move games from Sunday to Tuesday. He says Rams always screw me one way or the other. Was taking my daughter to LA for her first game. Anyone want tickets? I got 2. Can't go now. NFL's cheeks. So sorry to hear that. Vegas Eats Speaks. You were gonna enjoy the comfy, the plush interior of SoFi. Ain't gonna happen this time. So if somebody needs tickets, go hit them up. Vegas Eats Speaks on the chat. So for me on this game, I talked about this with Daniel Dovinh when we did our show yesterday, but I'm going to reiterate what I'd said before. This is going to be a hard game. All right, I think we all know this. I think for pound, if you just were to put us on a scale and go blow for blow, which team's going to win? I think we all know that Seattle's outmatched. On the defensive line, offensive line, probably just weapon wise. So it's going to take a little bit of creativity. It's going to take a little bit of, luck to help us out here. And so what I started by saying, my three keys are, my first one is we got to get the running backs and the tight ends. Those two departments I think are going to be key, because I don't think we can rely on the passing game to get us out of the situation. Given the pass rush history we've had with this team against the Rams, and assuming that they're, Jalen Ramsey and company are back, it's going to be tough to get a lot of plays to the air. So I think we've got to balance that defensive line by getting the tight ends and particularly the running game. The running backs have got to be able to be productive. We can't have negative plays or 1 yard or stonewalled for nothing. They've got to be able to produce. So we're going to really need those guys, running backs and tight end department. And then, as you guys said, the turnover battle. We've got to get lucky in the turnover battle. I think if the turnovers are even, I don't think we can win this game. I think we got to get at least one positive in our favor. That one play, that one fluke fumble or tip that gets picked off that turns the tide. You know what I mean? So it's not just blow for blow for blow for blow. Because I think if that happens, it's not happening. But if we get that one turnover that gives us an extra bonus possession, that can make up for the difference. And then finally, the red zone. I think the red zone, both stopping them or at least minimizing the damage in the red zone when the Rams are in our red zone, and us being able to capitalize when we're in the red zone. We know they're going to get their yards. We know Cooper Kupp's going to get yardage. He's going to get catches. They're going to get inside our 20 many times. But if we can somehow find a way to keep them from getting touchdowns every single time on a trip to the red zone and limit to some field goals, then on the flip side of Seattle, when we get to the red zone, we've got to score touchdowns. So, these are all kind of common sense, cliche. We've all said them at some point this season, but particularly against this team, we have to be really good, and we can't fall behind. We've seen it too much, right? When we get behind with the Rams, it becomes an ugly onslaught. We've got to find a way to get ahead. And if you remember that game that, like you mentioned, we were ahead. We should have been more ahead at the half when we played the Rams when Russell hurt his finger. Remember at the half? I believe wasn't it 7-3? Is that what the score was?
Yeah,
going into the half?
Myers.
And we should have had 10. They should have been 14. Except I think we had a holding call that took the touchdown back. We should have won that game. We had it in our hands, and then we blew it going into the half, and then the third quarter, we were in that mode. At that time of the year, I remember it was like the third quarter was our Achilles heel. We couldn't do jack in the third quarter of so many of those games, right? We were like disappeared. It's like they never came out of the locker room. And then LA just tore us apart. Jamal Adams got scorched.
Yeah.
He's not playing now, so we don't have to worry about we don't have to worry about LaShawn Jackson beating Jamal Adams because those guys aren't playing no more. So, who will it be? We know it's going to be Cooper Kupp. We're going to be screaming his name. Why don't they cover Cooper Kupp? I can already say it right now. I'm going to pre-script it. Why don't they cover Cooper Kupp? Just get used to hearing that because they know it. We know it.
Yep.
Everybody knows it, but for some reason, nobody can stop it. I don't understand how he can be so dominant.
I mean, no one
explain this to me.
Has been able to stop him this year, so we can't be super embarrassed about it.
Can we bracket him? Because how come DK gets completely shut down when we play the Rams, and all this just Jalen Ramsey, or they bracket him? Isn't that the excuse we've had all year that the reason DK is not getting the ball is because they bracket coverage him? They're double teaming him. Well, why don't we just do that?
Well, we're not.
He drops it, man. DK doesn't get involved because he drops it too much, and he can't. Nobody. Why would you trust him if every time you throw him the ball, he drops it, or he's getting in a fight with someone and blaming it on them like that? I put it on him dropping it too much. Based on how many times he's dropped it in the game, how many times do you think he drops it in practice?
So squab that, and just the fact that we're not creative, we're not innovative offensively. We don't find the ways to get our guys the football. And so if we had a more creative offensive mind, I mean, Shane Waldron, yes, he is that, or we hope, we like to think he is, but we just also kind of look at it as if he doesn't have as much autonomy as Pete Carroll does, and Pete Carroll's still running the offense. And so if we had a more creative offensive mind, then we could get, guys like DK involved, whether or not they're using bracket coverage. Because Cooper Kupp, I mean, I've seen teams, double up on him. And yet, Sean McVay and the rest of the offensive staff, they'll still, they'll line them up in different areas of the formation. They'll use them in motion. They'll give them the ball and quick screens, slants, and whatnot. So, I mean, even if you're using bracket coverage, there's still plenty of ways to get your guys the football. I mean, that's always been the problem with Seattle. Sometimes when we don't target our playmakers Like, why is it that Tyler Lockett isn't our most targeted receiver on third down? Like, we've seen that start to have more success, as of late. But why is it taking, week 14, 15 for us to realize that, he's our best receiver? And so obviously that's a huge indictment on the coaching staff, right? At least offensively.
What do you think, Martin? So we kind of transitioned from the game to what's been the Seattle's problems this year, and we're kind of opening up old wounds. But since we haven't talked as a group, I think it'll be good therapy to get some of these things out. So, here we are dealing with all this, amidst the dust and the commotion of COVID and the rescheduling in this game. Bottom line is we were 5-8, and a lot of conversations about why did we get here and what's going to happen next season. I do want to explore that final one before we end the show here today. But what has been the main reason why we are 5-8 this season?
I mean,
I'd like to, who do you point?
There are a lot of reasons, honestly. Well, first off, it's got to be Russell Wilson missing those 4 games in which we went 1-3, I guess. 1-3, or was it 1-2? 1-3. I'm pretty sure.
He missed 3 games, didn't he? I think he missed 3 games.
3 or 4.
Because we had 4 weeks and he missed a bye.
Saints, he beat the
Jaguars. Okay, yeah. Then there was 3 games. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we went 1-3 and 1-3 in those 3.5 games. Russell Wilson obviously has been carrying us for so many years ever since the LOB left. And then second off is definitely the game plan and the fact that we just can't adjust. I mean, these last 2 games where Russell Wilson's finally gotten back to his old self, it seems like we're kind of picking up the pace where we seem to be able to adjust a little more. But before that, man, it was rough. We'd come out of the locker room acting like what was going on. We had no clue what we were doing. Defense would give up so many 10-yard chunks. Offense had no idea what they were doing. They would just kind of punt it away and then let the defense go back on the field. And it was rough at that point. And then there's also time of possession. The Seahawks are really bad in time of possession. Everyone knows that. The other team will always get an average of 40 minutes to our 20 minutes. We always seem like we're trying to look for the big plays. We should just be taking what the defense gives us, even if it's a 5-yard check down. 5 yards is better than none or less than 0 yards. So, I mean, instead, obviously we all like the big play. The big play is exciting. We love it. But when you talk about how the other teams play, it's slow, methodical. Our defense gets tired. And there's us. With
so I want to stop you for a second because you brought up, I think more than anything else has been the number one thing, the lack of the time of possession, basically the inability to sustain drives. Whose fault is that? Who do you put the blame? We've had now 12 games, 13 games to now look at this thing, and we have a pretty good idea of what this team is all about. Who's really at fault for the inability to get the time of possession or convert third downs?
I feel.
All right, Martin, go ahead and answer that first, and then I want to bounce to the other guys.
I don't think it would be Pete Carroll's fault because I'm pretty sure Pete Carroll doesn't go into the locker room telling them, "Oh, let's have 2-minute drives and that's it," and let the defense be tired, because Pete Carroll's a defensive coach. He doesn't want his defense collapsing like that. So I mean, I feel like it might be Russell Wilson. This might sound unpopular. Because it seems like Russell Wilson, the second he gets that ball, he seems like he's going to look deep, try to look for DK or Lockett on the deep ball. And eventually that pocket collapses. He's going to have to run outside and throw it away or get sacked. Sometimes we have guys on checkdowns. And something that's been our issue is throwing over the middle to the tight ends. If you check the tight end stat line, they've done nothing this year. It's been really disappointing. We haven't utilized our tight ends as much as we used to. Seems like we just don't try to throw to them. It's always the money ball to DK, the money ball to Lockett, that deep 60-yard touchdown that can give us momentum. But a good way to obtain momentum is to slow down your pace, kill them with the clock. And that's just something we don't do. I feel like it's part of it. Most of it is on Wilson.
All right, so you put the blame mostly on Wilson for that. Okay, I want to go to Steezy on that. So you can address the other issues, but I want to really kind of address this third down inefficiency of the offense to time of possession, which we have been better lately. So we have to keep that in consideration. It has been better the last couple of games. But why was it so bad? Where do you put the blame, Steez?
I think it's unfair to put it solely on Russell Wilson. And so that being said, I'm going to have to say the entire offense and the entire offensive coaching staff, because one of the things, or one of the ways in which you can control time of possession is by running the football. We haven't been able to run the football for years now. And with Rashad Penny's 137-yard rushing performance against the Houston Texans, I brought this up on the Bolt the other day. That was Seattle's highest rushing output from a running back since Thomas Rawls. You guys remember who Thomas Rawls is? And that happened back in 2016. That was 5 years ago.
That's been our highest running output since Thomas Rawls in 5 years ago.
Yes.
Wow, and we had to have Rashad Penny be the one of all guys. Wow.
Guys. And so it's kind of hard to win time of possession when you can't run the football. I mean, that's one of the points. That's one of the reasons why you run the football, right? So you can kind of control the ball. You control, how much time your defense is on the field. I mean, the defense is holding up. We're top 7 in scoring defense. We're allowing barely over 20 points a game, despite the fact that Seattle's defense has spent the most amount of snaps playing football on defense. That's why we had 2 guys in the top 5 in total tackles, right? Bobby Wagner is leading the league in tackles. Jordan Brooks is currently 4th in the league in tackles. Quandre Diggs, he's been a ball hawk. The defense has been doing their job. Third down defense has been solid. Red zone defense has been solid. We're a bend but don't break defense. We allow yards. We give up plays underneath. But at the end of the day, we don't give up a lot of points. And especially in the red zone, we hold our own. Despite being on the field for so damn long, we're on the field. The defense is on the field for 35 plus minutes nearly every game. You can count on that. So our defense is spending so much time on the field. And not only are we unable to run the football, right? We also have an offense that's not very creative outside of the deep plays, outside of the big plays. What else do we do on offense? Well, we don't run a lot of checkdowns. We don't run screens. We don't run the ball effectively. Russell Wilson doesn't usually target the middle of the field and get the tight ends involved, or get, Tyler Lockett or DK the ball in space. We don't. What happened to all the motion? What happened to all the pre-snap motion? What happened to, having a more innovative offense? We don't have any of that. The offense is literally deep shots, Russell Wilson deep shots, and that's it. Unless we're taking a sack, unless we're taking negative plays. I mean, so it's on execution. It's on the guys, right, offensively, but it's also on the offensive coaching staff, because they haven't been able to work around our deficiencies, and it's been like that for years now. We've been terrible at time of possession for 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons now. Like, this isn't new. It's been like that. And you kind of look at, okay, well, what has been a common theme these last couple of years? We haven't had a ground game. And so I think that's really what it boils down to. We don't have a ground game, and in turn, play action is ineffective, because play action comes from having an effective or successful ground attack. And so it really comes down to that. When you look at Russell Wilson statistically, on third down, he has been awful. He's taken all these sacks. That's not entirely his fault. But when he does have the opportunity, he just hasn't. The stats show it. The eye test shows it. Everything shows it. Russell Wilson he's not doing his part on third down. The offensive line, for as bad as it is, they get worse on third down. Obviously, the ground attack has been non-existent, and the coaches aren't helping. They're not helping the execution. They're not helping the players, and it's been like that for years. And so I think it really just comes down to, and I can't stop saying this, but it's the offense as a whole. Execution has been bad. Coaching has been bad, and not having a ground attack. That's really what it comes down to.
Okay. So you have a lot there to dissect. What's hard about that is that, this is good. The thing about it is everybody rips Pete Carroll for being, old, antiquated and everything, but then he wants to run the football, which we're all saying we have to run the football. Yeah. Otherwise, play action, all the other things don't work. You just said it yourself, right? We have to run the football, right, Steezy? Mm-hmm. So yes, sir. There's no arguing that. I think we all agree we have to run the football. Then there's the other things we've got to implement as well. But I think it was also tough. You were mentioning about how bad Russell Wilson is on third down, and he has been. Problem also is that we've been in a lot of third and longs, right? Usually because the pattern has been like a first down, screen pass, -2, run the ball, 2 yards, and it's 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10. Occasionally we have the 3rd and shorts, and sometimes we don't get those either. But man, I feel like, I don't know the stats to back it up, but I'm sure our third down and longer than 5 are probably a lot higher than 3rd down and less than 5. I don't have the numbers to back it up, but just from my feeling of watching this team, it feels like we're in a lot of 3rd down and long situations, which is hard for anybody to convert on a consistent basis. But what I still get back to, and I'm still trying to get it, Martin said it's more on Russell Wilson. Steezy, you said it was kind of the entire offense. You kind of blame a little bit of Russ, you blame a little bit of coaching, you blame a little bit on talent. But how does this get fixed if we identify what the problem is? So Squabble, let's go to you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, well, just one last thing I forgot to add.
Yeah.
So another reason why you also put blame on not just the players, but the coaching staff is because you know that you can't run the football, right? And so as a coaching staff, your job is to adjust and to work around that. And so that isn't exactly what they've been doing. We know that we can't run the ball. So how do you work around that? Well, that's up to Pete. That's up to Shane Waldron. That's up to the rest of the coaching staff. And so you got to put your players in the best position to succeed. They're playing in a fire, and they have been for years. So it's both on the players and the coaches. Sorry,
Steve, I want to ask you something. I Squabble, I'm not ignoring you. I want to get. I know you're gonna have a lot to say. So hold.
Just for the record,
there.
this is helpful. I'm getting more stuff. Like, keep going.
Okay, all right. Yeah, he's getting ready for his closing argument. So Steezy, so here's the thing. I want to ask you this. This is a hypothetical which we can never prove, but that's what's fun about hypotheticals. Take the entire Seattle offensive roster and move it to LA, and then take LA's roster and move it to Seattle. Keep the coaches the same, but move the players. Would our talent be good enough to succeed in LA or some other team that has a, quote, brilliant-minded, progressive offensive coordinator or head coach? Do you think we have the talent that we actually could succeed in another system, and it's more of a system issue as opposed to a talent issue?
That's a tough question because our offensive line is
That's
very
what I'm asking
good. So we can have all the talent in the world, but if our offensive line just doesn't have the right pieces, even if you have a creative mind.
Yeah. Well, the reason I ask you is because there's a lot of chicken before the egg kind of thing. Because a lot of people say, well, the reason we got to blame the coaches because we haven't drafted well. So we don't have good players in the draft. That's why our line's no good. And that's why Russell doesn't have doesn't have the protection, blah, blah, blah. So that's why. But then there are times when I think maybe we do have the talent. It's really the implementation of the play calling and the use of that talent. And so I'll go back to you. Do you think we have the talent to succeed if we were in a whole different coaching system, offensive system? Could we still succeed, or do you think the talent is just too lacking and they would fall flat on their face if they were in Los Angeles, for example?
I'm gonna say, yeah, the offense will look a lot better despite the flaws or the deficiencies of the offensive line. I mean, on paper, not even just on paper, but on the field, we know what type of talent we have. We have a top 3, top 5 quarterback, and we have a top 5 wide receiver duo. And so that alone should be good enough to be able to make up for other deficiencies. And as long as you have a head coach that's able to utilize that properly, because I mean, you can work around a bad offensive line, right? By getting rid of the football quickly, by, getting the ball to playmakers in space, by throwing more screens, by having more pre-snap motions, bootlegs, play actions, and all that good stuff. And so we've seen other teams with bad offensive lines work around that. And so, yes, I'm going to say that if we had a different system, if we had a different coaching staff, if we had, a change of scenery, then yes, the offense will be a lot more explosive. Like Squabo said, we scored 30 points 4 times this year, and we played 13 games. No way should a team with Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and when healthy, Chris Carson, 4 times scoring 30 points in 13 games. That's awful. And one of those games was without Russ. So with Russ, we've only scored 30 points, 2 or 3 times? That's just not the best way to utilize all the talent that's on the roster. And we talk about Pete Carroll being antiquated and whatnot. I don't entirely side with that. Like, I believe that, not wholeheartedly, but partially. But if we had a better coach, and if we had a guy, or not a better coach, but if we had a guy that was more innovative, then he'd be able to work around that. He still continues to insist on running with this identity that worked for us before, and clearly that hasn't worked for us in years. And yet he still keeps on insisting, running into that wall over and over and over and over again. Like, what was that Albert Einstein quote? The definition of insanity is doing something over and over and over again and getting the same results. Right. And so I'm not saying Pete Carroll was crazy or anything, but maybe he's a little crazy because he insists on, continuously running the football and knowing that it's not going to work. And instead, why not go to the strength of this football team, which is in our pass catchers?
So by you answering that question is yes, if you move the entire offensive roster to another team like Los Angeles and they would do better, you are essentially calling out the coaching staff because you're saying the talent's good enough.
It's also up to the players because, like I said, Russell Wilson statistically on third down, I know he's been playing around the fire, but if he is that top 3, top 5 guy and he has carried this team in the past, why hasn't he been able to do that this year?
But if it's Russell Wilson's fault, like if Martin said, if Martin were to answer that question, that means if Russ is to blame, he would just take his same mentality and chuck it deep mentality to LA, and regardless of the system, Russ would get himself in the same trouble because he'd keep doing the same thing. If what you're saying is true, that Russ keeps doing the same stuff and it's his fault. Now, while you're hanging on that,
that's why I'm trying to assign blame everywhere. Because I mean, Russ, he still doesn't look, towards the middle of the field. He doesn't like to throw those checkdowns when they're available to him, and so. I don't know. There's a lot of places to go, but
it's harder than a Rubik's Cube to solve because there's no one thing, and we can't unfortunately trade teams out. That'd be fun though. Wouldn't it be fun? Like for one game, hey guys, we're gonna put more offense on your team. We're gonna see how it goes. Just see, like, wow, Russell Wilson, DK, man, they're connecting on this team for some reason, but I don't know why it's not working in Seattle. Okay, Squabble, you've waited long enough. You've had time to digest all this nonsense. Put some sense into this. What say you? The reasons for Seattle's struggles and why they are 5-8, particularly on the offensive side of the ball with their time of possession and third down struggles.
No, there's a lot to dissect here, and you guys have hit on a lot of points. I'd like to start with what went wrong this season and then get to kind of the overarching picture, future of the Seahawks kind of deal, right? So, as you mentioned, Martin, Seattle was 1-3 in games where Wilson was injured this year. Now, remember, the doctor said he would be out for that injury, the mallet finger, the dislocation. He should be out 8 weeks. And remember, he cut that time in half. 7, 8, whatever, right? Like he cut the time in half. The Hawks were 0-3 in the time before Wilson was supposed to be back, but he came back early. He suffered his first shutout ever, 0-17 at Green Bay. He was versus Arizona, 13-23 loss, and at Washington, 15-17 loss. So in the time that Wilson was supposed to be gone via injury, we sucked offensively. Then in the time after Wilson, the timeline was back after the 7-8 weeks. Wilson and the Seahawks are 2-0, scoring 30 points in both matchups, 30-23 win over San Francisco and 33-13 win at Houston. So without question, to me, the season comes down to blaming, if beyond anything else, it's the injury to Russell Wilson. That's been our most constant, most consistent player since he got drafted in the NFL. And obviously without our starting quarterback, who's been an MVP candidate multiple times, we're going to suffer. That being said, I want to see Pete Carroll in Seattle split ways. I am not removing all blame from Russell Wilson. I want to make it clear. He has missed throws. He had made improper reads. He's not the only person to have made mistakes on the Seahawks that I think are making mistakes because they're overcompensating for something that they don't have faith in anymore. And that's Pete Carroll and his grasp on the offense. What's Pete Carroll's official title again? Here we go. Head coach and executive vice president of football operations. That means he has a lot of power. So a lot of the things that have happened over the last couple of years in Seattle, he gets a lot of credit for. That includes the draft woes. That includes the Jamal Adams trade. Pete goes away from the Seahawks identity when situations get tough. And that's not what football is about. And that is a problem. All 2014, we ran the football, beast mode, run the ball, beast mode, run the ball, beast mode, goal line on the Super Bowl, let's throw it. Going away from the identity, that's when he first lost everyone. Then, early on in his career, and I've made the point that it's because he was coming from USC and he was just recruiting the same players to go to college. But he knew the draft class so well when he first got into the NFL. Early on, his entire success was around drafting and bringing in and developing players from a young age. Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, the list goes on. Earl Thomas. First of all, he hasn't had a first rounder drafted that went to a Pro Bowl since 2010. Second of all, now he's so sick and he knows that he's bad at drafting now. He knows that. How often have we been trying to get rid of our early round picks after drafting Rashad Penny 27th overall in 2018, Malik McDowell 35th overall in 2017, LJ Collier 29th overall in 2019, and Jermaine Ifedi 31st overall in 2016. I wouldn't want to draft early either. And so because of that, he's overcompensating to make a poor trade for our franchise that now looks even worse. Jamal Adams has been injured every season he's been been in Seattle. Before the trade was made, I came out and made a video saying what we need to trade for Jamal Adams. That was a 2nd-round pick and Bradley McDougald. And if that wasn't the price, I wouldn't make the trade. 2 firsts, a 3rd, and our starting safety. Now we're looking at bringing in Bradley McDougald again to replace Jamal Adams because he's injured. And now he resets the safety market, being the highest paid, getting paid damn near linebacker money. We needed a running back this offseason, and I've been trying to tell people that going away from Chris Carson, I lost faith in him. He's losing a step, and with the style of running back that he is, it's nothing against him, but with his style, the ground and pound, the physical, those guys have a very early expiration date. So heading into this offseason, knowing Rashad Penny hasn't been able to stay on the field at all since he got into the NFL, we have a hole at running back, and we've struggled to run the football. But we didn't want to bring someone in because a couple years ago in the 1st round, we drafted one in 2017, and it looked horrible, and we've taken so much heat for it, and Pete Carroll is refusing to acknowledge that he was wrong and to go out and bring in another big-name running back to be our new workhorse. We can't rely on someone that's been injured. I don't care that Rashad Penny had a phenomenal game this week. We needed him before this week. We needed him when Russell Wilson was injured. We needed him all season long when we haven't been able to run the football. Our offense has had consistent problems since the Super Bowl, and I have a list of some of those problems. The thing is, we've had 3 different offensive coordinators since the Super Bowl lost, and the only constant is Pete Carroll. We've had no short pass game. We've been forcing the balls to players at the wrong time. That includes in the playoff game against the Los Angeles Rams when DK Metcalf throws a tantrum on the sideline. And how does Pete Carroll respond to that? How does the offense respond to this terrible childlike behavior? He was already wearing a binky. He throws a tantrum on the sideline, and the next play, we get the ball and we force it to him immediately. That turns into a pick 6 that becomes the difference in the ball game, ending our season once again because of a poor decision where we forced it to the wrong player at the wrong time. Gerald Everett versus the 49ers. He already fumbled the ball and gave it up off a triple tip interception to the 49ers 2 weeks ago. And then on the final drive on 3rd down and goal with a chance to extend it to a 2-possession lead in the late in the 4th quarter and a chance to essentially win the game against the 49ers on 3rd down, we give the ball to the same guy who's given the ball to the 49ers twice, and he does it again. One more fumble for Gerald Everett. Pete Carroll and this offense has been forcing the ball to the wrong players at the wrong time. We have, like Steezy mentioned, improper personnel and development across the offensive line. I said coming into this year, we need a new center. We didn't get a new center. And the guy that we've been developing is not cutting it. I think splitting ways with Pete Carroll allows him to go into retirement. And I've heard from people close to the Seahawks, because I have been connecting with people close to the Seahawks, that they're telling me off the record, it's just time for them to part ways. It's time for him to go his separate way, and it's not time for him to restart. Wilson has so much time left. Pete, you still are extremely talented, best coach in Seahawks history. It's time for this to go separate ways. Everyone is overcompensating because they've lost faith in Pete Carroll's touch on the offense.
Wow. Now, you said a mouthful there, man. But so obviously, I think Martin had to go. So Martin, thanks for joining us. It was good to have you on here. Now, before we go too much further, I want to make sure I'm okay with you guys' time. How much time you got left? We've been going for about an hour now. I know you guys got other obligations to go. How much time you got left? Because I want to wrap this up at the right time.
In an hour, I'm about to go into the same thing all over again with a Rams fan. So
okay, all right. Well, this is a good warm up for you. And Steezy, I know you have one coming up too. All right. So we'll try to wrap this up in the next 5-10 minutes. Will that work?
Yeah, 10, 15, 20.
Okay.
30 minutes.
All right.
Don't matter.
All right, so this was going to lead to my next question, which is, I think regardless of what happens, obviously we all dream of somehow Seattle going from the basement to eking it in and sneaking in somehow into the 7th wild card spot, the 7th playoff spot. It's going to take a miracle and a half to get there, but can they do any damage once they get there? I think a lot of us know we're hanging by a thread here. So we're already looking to next year. I think I already get the answer from what you guys are saying. But when it comes to Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson, obviously you just said, Squabo, that Pete Carroll's got a lot of power. So the only person who can get rid of Pete Carroll is either himself or Jody Allen. Nobody else can get rid of him. No one else got the authority to do so. So that's what it's going to take for that scenario to play out. But so what happens, do you think? I guess there's two things. What do you want to have happen next year, and what do you think is going to happen next year? And there's three options, I suppose. It's either they're both back, one or the other is back, or none of them are back. Steezy, I'll throw it your way. What do you want to have happen, and what do you think is going to happen next year?
So I still have love for Pete. I mean, like Squab said, not only is he obviously the best coach in Seahawks history, I'm going to go as far as to say he might just be the best Seattle sports coach in the entire Seattle sports history. So not just football, but basketball. I know we've had some legendary coaches. Lenny Wilkins, I'm thinking about you, for the Sonics from back then. But no, Pete Carroll's the best coach in Seattle sports history. And so I think that has kind of given him, this long leash that he has. And so what I think is going to happen is that he'll probably remain as the head coach, but I do think he's going to be relinquished of his duties as the vice president of this football team. Not too many people know about this, but prior to this year, Bill Belichick was another head coach / vice president of football operations. And we've seen the Patriots in the last 4, 5, 6, 7 years, while they did have this dynasty, they've been one of the worst teams at drafting. And the year that Bill Belichick is relinquished of his duties as far as drafting and personnel moves, they get Mac Jones. And now they have this terrific rookie class. And he was not the one who drafted this class. And so the year in which he's able to finally focus just strictly on coaching, here the Patriots are sitting atop the AFC. A lot of people have them as the favorites in the entire AFC because now he's just focused on being the head coach, not being the head coach and the head personnel guy. And so I think with this little mini run that we've kind of gone on, this momentum that we've been able to establish in the last 2 games, I think I've seen just enough to see head coach Pete Carroll stay on for one more year as a head coach. But I'm going to have whatever offensive coordinator is in Seattle next year, I would like, or ideally, that coordinator, I want that coordinator to be able to have complete say over the offense, just because we know Pete Carroll could still field a top 10 defense. I mean, this defense has been holding their own despite being on the field for damn near 40 plus minutes every single game. And so he can manage the defense. He can stay on as a head coach. I know he's been making a whole bunch of boneheaded decisions when it comes to clock management and not being aggressive in the right moments, but he could stay on as a head coach. I could see a future in where Russ and P is still there, but I just see him losing some power. I think that's what happens, and that's actually what I would like to happen.
So you want to see the two of them here. You want Russell back, you want Pete back, but you want Pete back in a more limited basis. Just coaching,
so no
but
control over
not
the offense, no control over personnel, just the defense, and obviously a Russell Wilson I'd like for him to stay, but that's all.
So he's our new defensive coordinator.
Well, it's essentially him. It's not Ken Norton, so I wouldn't say he's the new defensive coordinator. He would just kind of.
Okay, that's fair.
Well, so structurally, it doesn't really change much on the sideline. It's just more of what's happening behind the scenes when it comes to draft day and kind of personnel decisions. But on the sideline, it wouldn't look any different. I mean, as far he'd still be the head coach, still have the head coach title. He'd be the one throwing the challenging flags. He'd have the headset. He'd still be chewing the gum. So it wouldn't really look that different. It's just more of what his power is. That's the main difference you see. And you think Russ would be okay with that? You think he will, well, technically he's still under contract, so he's not gone next year, even unless Seattle and them decided to, but you see them both being back.
If Russ isn't cool with it, then I don't see that happening. I mean,
you think he's cool with it? I know none of us know what Russ is thinking. So Adam Schefter knows as much as you and I do. So I would take a guess. Do you think Russ wants to be here next year? Is it a Pete, if Pete leaves type of thing? Or do you think he really, because he was asked that question. I don't know if you guys heard the press conference, right? People asked, because there was that story that floated out there that Russ was talking to the team, said he'd drop his no trade clause if he could go to, what was it?
Giants, Broncos, Saints.
Giants, Broncos, yeah, and Saints, right? And then he was flat out asked about that in a press conference, and he said, "No, I don't know about that. I didn't say that. I'm not on social media. I've hoped to be a Seahawk for 20 more years. That kind of stuff." So, do you believe him? Do you believe, or is that just a line of bull, or do you really think he wants to be here? I'm asking Steezy before I transition to Squabo.
I do believe he wants to be here, but there has to be some change.
Okay, all right, Squabo. So I'll ask you the same question. What do you think? What do you want to have happen, and what do you think will happen? I think I already know. You've already said very clearly you want Pete Carroll out. So, but what do you think will happen? And will Russell? I already know you want Pete Carroll out. The question is, if he's out, is Russell still here? Is that what you want? And what do you think is going to happen?
100%. I want Pete gone. Not only do I want Pete gone, now is the time to do it at the end of the season, because I just took you through all the stats as to showing you how all that's been said about Pete Carroll. If Russell Wilson doesn't get injured, we're still a playoff team, and we're still in wild card contention. We're still playing. Like, we lost to the Saints 13-10 without Russell Wilson. We lost in an overtime game to the terrible Steelers without Russell Wilson. We're winning both of those games with Russell Wilson. So this season, 100% gets chalked up to Russell Wilson. But that is the reason that we have to get rid of Pete right now, because he's been clinging. He's already shown us his best. He's already shown us the Super Bowl victory, the drafting, and then he showed us the decline. He showed us that now that he's out of touch with college, he's not drafting as well, and he's struggling to amount value and to make trades that are good for Seattle moving forward. Now is the time to get rid of Pete Carroll, because when else has Russell Wilson ever been injured in his career and we've been able to highlight Pete Carroll as a coach? It's never happened, and we don't know if it's going to happen again. So outside of this year, when are we going to ever have an opportunity to make a move like this? That being said, this is also a depreciating asset, and that is playing in Seattle. Seattle is what, the 13th biggest market in the United States? It's not up there with the New York or an LA or a Chicago, or, there are bigger markets. There are more successful teams. Then why does anyone want to come play in Seattle? If it's not because we're the best team, if it's not because we have the biggest market, if it's not because everyone likes to coach, because I've made plenty of arguments that show otherwise, and why people are concerned. We saw Trey Flowers storm out and practically force his way off the team. It's a mutual agreement, but I think that's what it's going to come down to at the end of this year. I think it's going to be a mutual agreement for Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks to go their separate ways. Pete Carroll is going to go into something other than coaching. He's not going to go somewhere and coach full time anymore. And the Seahawks are going to be able to say, hey, thank you so much for all that you did. We're going to bring in a new progressive-minded coach that's going to change everything in Seattle. I'm talking about an offensive guy. I'm talking about a guy that's going to capitalize on Russell Wilson. I'm talking about Eric Bieniemy. I'm talking about the guy that refused to hey, I think he agrees.
Your dog agrees.
Hey, please, baby, please. 1 sec.
Hijacked, derailed by the puppy.
Norb, if I may.
Yeah, go for it, man.
I don't believe I got to distinguish some of my thoughts from earlier, but what I meant by Pete staying on board for another year, that's what I think will happen. That's not necessarily what I want to happen. I just really believe that that's what's going to happen, because when you look at it contractually, right, Pete Carroll just signed a 5-year extension. So he's in year 1 of that extension. So if you talk about Pete resigning or him getting fired, there's going to be a lot of money owed to Pete Carroll. That's what 4 years and like 20-30 plus million. And Squad mentioned it. We're not, top 3 or top 5 in terms of, the market that we're in. And so Seattle, I know Jody Allen she's rich, but to waste and simply just throw away 20 to 30 million, I mean, the sort of buyout that they'd have to agree with, there's a lot of complications that come with that. And so that's why I believe Pete Carroll stays on for another year, but with relinquished power, just because when you look at his contract situation, there's still so much money involved. It's like people don't look at that part of the situation. It's easy to say, fire Pete, get rid of him, but what happens contractually? I mean, it's harder to get rid of a coach than it is for a player, because I think coaches have their entire salary fully guaranteed, or it's at least more guaranteed than players. And so there's still that has to take place behind the scenes. It's not going to be that easy to get rid of him in his four years and 20 to 30 plus million left on his contract. And I'm pretty sure
of course the Jaguars just fired Urban Meyer, not even finishing 1 year of his. Was it a 5-year deal that he got?
I think it was a 5-year deal.
That thing was a dumpster fire before it even started. Now I'm not comparing situations. I'm not comparing situations at all. But nonetheless, they had to cut that. They had to pull that cord. They had to snip that, divorce that relationship real fast.
And one thing I might add before Squab continues, because I agree with Squab, bro. Like, I'm with you, because I've taken so much heat from other Seahawks fans talking to me about how I don't know football or how I'm spoiled because I wasn't there, when the Seahawks were playing in the 90s. And so I get it, but I'm still I'm okay with Pete going. It's just I just feel like behind the scenes it'll be too difficult for all that to really come to fruition just this offseason unless Pete just decides to retire, which I think is on the table. I just don't know how the logistics behind the scenes would play out, and I don't know how smooth it would go. So I think the easiest way would just be for him to relinquish power and just focus on defense. And then you bring in another offensive mind. You bring in or you give all that power, the personnel power to John Schneider. Just let Pete focus on coaching. Because, I mean, he still has some touch in terms of, how he's able to coach defensively. Maybe the schemes aren't the best, but like I said earlier, top 10 scoring defense, top 10 red zone defense, top 10 third down defense. There's still a lot to work with there. And so, that's where I stand.
Yeah. And it's hard. Squavo? Yeah, he's still Squavo? How's everything going? Is your dog still trying to steal camera time from you?
Hey, I just had to just go talk to him real quick. We talked and it's good. He's good.
Okay.
He just wanted some attention.
All right. Got you the attention he got. All right. So you're about ready to wrap up you're on a roll. You're like going into sliding into home, full momentum, and then it all stopped. So see if you can pick up where you left off if you're able to regroup your thoughts.
Thank you. I try and leave my Chihuahua in the room so he doesn't bark, but when I get a knock on the door, he's gonna bark regardless, and that's kind of what the problem was. But so yeah, essentially, and Steezy, I'm hearing what you're saying at least as much as I could because I did have to step away. So. What you're saying about Pete Carroll and severing the contract. That's why it's a mutually agree to part ways so that both sides disagree. All right, let's rip it. You retire. We go our separate ways. We're not firing you. It's no smear on your image or all that, and it's just more of a friendly way to part ways. Additionally, the reason that I think that we have to do it right now, Seattle is a depreciating asset. We talked about how small the market is. We talked about how we have not been successful. We talked about how Pete Carroll is losing the locker room. So why does anyone want to come here, especially if Russell Wilson leaves? A franchise quarterback is a reason to want to go to Seattle. But if Russell Wilson leaves, we don't even have that. So we need Russell Wilson so much right now, whereas Pete Carroll is losing part of the locker room. Now, if we get rid of Pete Carroll and bring in that progressive-minded Eric Bieniemy right now, then we get a new offensive-minded, a guy that's been highly regarded, led one of the best offenses in the NFL for years, and has been waiting for the right opportunity. It makes sense for him because he didn't go anywhere, because he doesn't want to go somewhere and be unsuccessful and immediately have to be demoted back to an offensive coordinator role. So if we bring in Bieniemy, we give him the starting job, we give him the power. We're competing with our division, who has already shown that they are willing to do whatever it takes to win a Super Bowl, spend whatever money is necessary, make whatever moves is necessary, and that is to win right now. So we're competing with our division. We bring in an offensive-minded head coach. It's a change of a speaker in the locker room. Seattle has a reason. There's a reason for free agents to start to come here. Everson Griffin should have been in Seattle. Why was he not? Well, perhaps Corey Linsley. There were guys that we wanted in Seattle, but we couldn't get. Well, maybe if we had an offensive-minded head coach, a new guy, a guy that took Patrick Mahomes and had him set records, and we put him with a perennial MVP candidate with Russell Wilson, what could that bring to Seattle? The reason we have to move off Pete is because we'll never have a year like this year where Russell Wilson will get injured, and we're going to see Pete Carroll even more exposed. We're in a depreciating asset, and it's time to make the move right now, especially if we're going away from our ways of sticking with a guy no matter what for super long. He continues to get us to the playoffs. Let's not lower our expectation to match our reality. Just because we're Seattle doesn't mean we can't be perennial Super Bowl champions. We need to make the move right now. If we're going to switch to progressive, we have to do that by making a progressive move ahead of the curve. Get rid of him now. We've seen enough. We know he's not going to win us another Super Bowl. Let's move on and bring in the new guy.
And when you say now, you're saying after this season.
Yes.
Not mid-season.
Regardless of what happens.
Regardless if we make a miracle comeback, blaze through the playoffs like no one's ever seen before and win a Super Bowl, he should still be gone.
He definitely should retire then.
Right on to the sunset, right?
No matter what happens, he needs to go.
To strengthen Squab's argument, I'll say this. With great power comes great responsibility. And, he's right. He hasn't done a whole lot with that power in the last couple of years. So I wouldn't be opposed to it. That's just what I believe will happen. But obviously, if what Squabo says does end up coming to fruition, I'm not going to argue it.
All right. Well, your positions have been made clear. Let me get one last thing. We did the keys to the game, but I don't think I actually got your prediction on what's going to actually happen in the game. We're coming to the end here, so I want to get: Are we going to win? Or are we going to lose? Squabo, you first.
33-28, Hawks win.
Okay, Steezy.
Yeah, I'm a ride. Seattle 29, LA 28.
All right, close one. I think I had it 27-24 with a last-minute field goal being the difference. All right, I know you guys got to go. I do want to get one caller, Coach Mesh, Seahawks for Life, who's been waiting in the Discord. Let's see if we can get this technology to work. Coach Mesh, you got a question or a comment?
Can
you guys hear him?
I actually kind of have I also have a solution. Seattle could potentially make it to the playoffs even with an 8-9 record.
Okay, I guess mathematically, if enough teams ahead fall back, we haven't done the playoff machine scenarios yet, but we are in the playoffs 7-9, but you make it into 8-9, barely. Playoffs is one thing, being one and done, and we were there last year and didn't do much for us.
And we would have to play LA again if the
probably at some point
schedule.
Yeah. Is that your point though? Is that we could still make the playoffs with an 8-9 record?
Yes, that's pretty much my point.
That's your point. Okay, well, keeping hope alive. It could happen.
Yeah. There's definitely got to be a lot of running game, and there's definitely got to be a lot of. I want to see more trickeration. I want to see Seattle not up to their sleeves, and be like a scientist that discovered something.
Trickeration. So you want to see a little aggressiveness, a little bit of something different, something exciting, something. Be aggressive. Just not play the same stuff that we've been doing. What was that, Steve?
A fake punt on 4th and 3.
Fake punt, yeah, exactly. We know that wasn't Pete Carroll's call, though. That was all Travis Homer. Pete Carroll even admitted. He said that's a Travis Homer call. If they see a look, he makes a decision and he calls it. So Pete Carroll had nothing to do with that. So you can't even give Pete Carroll credit for that. That's a Travis Homer call right there. He said so. I'm gonna let you guys wrap up, and I might take some calls after you guys finish because I want to give you guys the time because I know you guys have other obligations. So to wrap up your end of things, I just want to give you guys a chance to. We haven't even had a chance to talk about your channels here. So both your channels are in the description. So look them up. Squabo Says and Steve Z.A. Smith. Do you guys want to? I know you guys got shows you're doing today. Anything you want to promote as far as what you want anyone to be aware of that you guys got going on your side? Squabo, start with you.
Well, thank you, Norb. I always find it interesting. Every time I come on here with you guys, I feel like Steezy gets smarter, brings up more points, and dresses better. And Norb, I feel like you remind me of this. I saw this meme on social media, and I'm sure there's some other people here that have seen it. It's a picture of Frank Gore when he first got into the NFL, and it's a picture of Frank Gore now. And they look exactly the same. And that's you, the ageless wonder. You never change your appearance, and you look so young. And, you got such good energy. So I love being on here with you guys. Thank you guys so much. Cece is on the verge of 3,000 subscribers.
Yes.
We need to get him there. That should be the priority, the talk of the town this evening. Are you kidding me? He is right there on the doorstep. We got 100 people tuned in. He doesn't even need all of you, but you should all do it anyways. You know what I'm saying? Like, go help out Steezy. And when you're done with that, in half an hour, maybe a little bit sooner, maybe a little bit later, I'm going to go live on my channel with Payo Time, a Los Angeles Rams YouTuber who recently surpassed 1,000 subscribers himself, and he's been doing amazing things. He is one of the nicest sports fans I've ever met. He's one of the few Rams fans I can deal with. So, like, I think he's spectacular. We're going to talk about everything we just talked about, plus the Rams' perspective from all of it.
How they should have forfeited that game.
Yep.
But anyway, all right. So check out Squabble Says. Yeah, you got a show coming up. So make sure you click on his channel, subscribe, and watch his content as well. So how about you, Steezy? On the verge of 3,000. What you got?
Man, Squabble, my brother, bro. Thank you so much. I got a number for you guys, 213. So there's about 100 of you guys tuned in right now. That's about half of 213. 213 is the number that we need to get Squabble to hit 1K. We can start off with 13. Once we get to 800, then the 200 of y'all can come in and help him get to 1K, hopefully by the end of this year. But 213, keep that number in mind, and let's keep lowering that as much as we possibly can. Like Squabble said, though, Norb, it's always a pleasure. I always look forward to this. And I always try to fit it in, whenever I possibly can. I hope we can continue to do this more often, especially with the season coming to a close, playoffs or not. We're riding, and so hopefully we could do this again next week or sometime soon whenever we can all kind of align our schedules together. But look, 5:30, if you guys can tune in, Squabble Says his channel. He will be previewing the Rams matchup with Payo Time. And I can attest, he's a great guy. He's actually one of the few Rams fans I could also, handle. There's a couple out there as well, but he's definitely one that I want to shout out. So please, tune in to Squab's live stream. I mean, he brought up a whole bunch of great points, and the eloquence with which he speaks. I mean, come on, y'all. Let's give him some props. But not only that, tonight I am dropping a fantasy football video that I've been working on for a while. It's about 18 minutes long, 17 minutes long. And so there's a lot. It's jam-packed, but I will be dropping it tonight around 7:30, 8 o'clock p.m. Pacific time. It is called Dominate Your Fantasy Football Playoffs with These 3 Tips. I know, like Squabble alluded to in the beginning of this show, fantasy football playoffs are starting. I know COVID cases and all that are rising, especially, in the NFL, but fantasy football is still going. And I know a lot of you guys play, especially in the chat. I know you guys are in some leagues with us. And so for those of you guys that are still kind of new to the game, and if you're looking for some tips and you're kind of tired of listening to all these other dudes, show me some love. Tap in, tune in, 7:30, 8 o'clock p.m. Pacific time on @SteezyA Smith, SteezyASmith. Look, it's free game, and I'm not charging any of you guys for it. So take advantage while you can, and stay tuned. Mark your calendars, and reserve that time if you possibly can. Thank you.
That is a fantasy football expert. 14 leagues he runs, and he made 14. The playoffs in all 14.
Wow.
So, that's unreal.
That is crazy. I do have to show this though. That I'm in the Pond Scum, my Pond Scum team, which is look at this. I'm up 60.9 over 32.8 over Steezy for the time being. It's early.
Travis Kelce had a good game.
But the Travis Kelce, man, woo! Travis Kelce tore it up right there. 41 fantasy points last night. That helped a lot.
That hurt the both of us. And Norb, all year long, you have not said a word about fantasy.
Because I'm just doing it. It's like my side little thing. Like, oh yeah, I got to check my fantasy team. I'm not. You guys are like hardcore, 14 leagues and all that. I'm just like, oh, that's right. Thursday game starting. I better go check my thing, and I'll make a tweak here or there. But so I'm hanging in there with my 6-8 record or whatever. But I'm having a good time with it. It's I don't know how you guys do it. 14 leagues, Steez. Wow. and you're dominating them. That's crazy, man.
I mean, it helps that there's money involved. So that's kind of something that I try to think about with these 14 leagues. There's some money involved. So
Yeah, so the thing of it, and that's the thing I would not do with money involved in a major way, because I would just like lose my mind, because it would be so frustrating trying to keep up with all this. But props to you, man. So yeah, go check him out for his advice. Even though he's losing to me currently, he does know his game. So, all right, before you guys go, I got Tyler Parcher. He calls himself King Tyler on the Discord. He's been begging to want to say hi to you guys. So before you go, I want to have Tyler be able to say a quick hello to you. So Tyler,
Hey,
Tyler, yo,
hey,
Hello, Tyler.
not much.
bro, Tyler, bro, I love watching your videos of your walks and to Starbucks and getting your drink. Like they literally make my day every time I see them.
Nice.
if you want to make Tyler's day, though, what you got to do is do some car startup videos. Tyler likes those, where you just basically show yourself
Yep.
starting up your car.
He does.
and going. So there you go. That's
Hey,
that's his
Tyler, I
thing.
got you. I got you.
Yeah.
He did.
National
There you
anthem
go.
videos. Don't forget that. National anthem videos.
But don't you dare sing happy birthday to him on his birthday. That's a no.
Yes. Nope.
You can greet him,
He-
but don't sing the song. I don't really know why.
Norm, you
It's
should
just
do
his
like
thing.
a random 1v1 Madden game tonight if you have time.
I don't know if I can. I got a volleyball thing with my girls, so volleyball's always eaten into my life, man. If it's not high school, it's the club game. So, but don't worry, we got some Sims coming out, man. So I'm glad you guys got to at least say hi to the fellas before they take off and do their collab. So, Tyler, we'll be in touch a little bit later. All right.
Thank you, Tyler.
Anyway, that's it. We're going to wrap things up right here. So I want to say again, special thanks to all my guests. I know Martin had to go earlier, but Seahawks Martin, Squabo says, get him to 1K, you guys, and get Steezy to 3K. They're so close. You know, if everybody who was watching today did that, they would be so dang close. I think Steezy would hit it, and then Squabo would be like half the way there. So support these guys. You guys do great content. You guys made me look good here today. So I love you guys' passion. I missed this so much. I hope we can do it again. And I hope we're doing it next week, talking about how we won this crazy game on a Tuesday night. That would be hella fun to be talking about that. So we'll see what happens. It's gonna be a crazy week, but we're gonna be having football practically every day. Starting Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Is there a game on Wednesday too? Just keep it all going. 7 days a week. The players will love it. Anyway, thank you guys. Appreciate you. Let's see what happens I want to say this Sunday. This Tuesday, we got to wait. What sucks about this, we got to wait 5 days for a game now. Or what, 3 days? Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. 4 days now. We got to wait 4 days before a football game. That sucks because I can't go that long. Yo.
I'm so sorry. There's one more thing.
Closing arguments are done, son. We can't
No.
have any more evidence admitted to court. No. Go ahead. What?
Not even about this. Well, it's because the game got postponed. It's 4 p.m. on Tuesday. That's the time we always do the Bolt.
Oh,
That's the time we do our show every single week.
Oh.
And
so what
so
are
I'm
you gonna do?
I'm thinking of doing like a Bolt special, like a live watch party with
Oh, there you go.
the
Might
staff
as
of
well.
the Bolt. Just something to
There you
think
go.
about. And shout out Mike Gutierrez. I see you.
Yeah, Mike Gutierrez wants a shout out. There you go. There he is.
Thank you.
It's your boy X, who was the champ of the first Madden tournament on NorbCord. Says he's going to sub you guys right now. So there you go. There's one closer.
shout out
Spread
Mike.
the word. Spread the word.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on this weekend and see how the COVID lists play out and the rest of the teams and the games play out. And then Tuesday will be very interesting. This is history in the making. First Seahawks game on a Tuesday, I think. Right? This will be the first ever Seahawks Tuesday game.
It could be.
For what it's worth, I don't think we've ever played on a Tuesday. So, for what it's worth, we have history in the making. All right. Thank you, fellas. You guys have great shows. Have a great weekend. And we will talk to y'all later. Have a good one. Go Hawks, baby.